Hello and welcome to the first module in the short course on risk assessment. My name is Kara Morgan and I work in the Center for Foodborne Illness Research and Prevention in the Department of Food Science and Technology at Ohio State University. And in addition to material that I've developed, this entire course will include material from many of my colleagues, so I wanted to acknowledge them here. We also have material contributed by Barb Kowalczyk, who's also at Ohio State, Ari Havalar, who's part of the Emerging Pathogens Institute at the University of Florida, Juliana Rizante, who is at RTI International, and Leon Goris, who is a consultant, and also Leon is the lecturer for the risk management course that's part of this series. So before we get started into the details of risk assessment, I wanted to use this module to introduce you generally to the course, and then we'll walk through the different parts of it. But first I wanted to give this context for the course, which is this project that we're doing called TARTAR. It's a project based in Ethiopia and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and also the United Kingdom's Department for International Development. This project is based in Ethiopia and is meant fundamentally to help build a risk-based decision-making system for food safety in Ethiopia. So our particular project is the assessment and management of risk from non-typhoidal salmonella, diarrheogenic Escherichia coli, and Campylobacter in raw beef and dairy in Ethiopia. So the acronym is TARTAR. And this course was developed to help support that work. These are very short courses meant to just introduce the ideas of this one's on risk assessment. And clearly there's many more materials and content that you could dig into on these topics, and this is really just meant to be an orientation to risk assessment for the purposes of our project, as I'll discuss in the next few slides. But again, back to the larger project, we have several collaborators on the project that I wanted to acknowledge on this slide. We are working with the University of Florida. We're working with the Institute for Livestock Research in Ethiopia. We are also working with several universities in Ethiopia who are contributing students and scientists and faculty to help us, including Addis Ababa University, Haramaya University, and University of Gondar. And then we also are partnering with the Ethiopian Public Health Institute, EPHI. And then of course, our Global One Health partners are affiliated with Ohio State University. We have an office based in Addis for Global One Health, the GoHi office. And then, of course, our funders are Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and UK DFID. So the overall goal of TARTAR, as I mentioned, is to use a risk-based approach, use risk-based thinking to address the knowledge gaps that are needed to help start reducing the burden of foodborne illness in Ethiopia. And then also develop cost-effective, gender-sensitive, and sociocultural appropriate approaches for mitigating the impact of foodborne disease, so helping to move the lever on reducing those illnesses. And then the idea is to, from what we learned from this project in Ethiopia, to be able to build a roadmap for other low and middle income countries to start to use when they're working towards reducing foodborne illness. More details on the project can be found at the link provided below. If you go to foodsafety.osu.edu, that's the whole center, and you can find the research project TARTAR there, as well as other projects that are underway in our center. So my particular part of the TARTAR project is the third objective in the project. The first two are about estimating the burden and then about evaluating interventions. And my part is about establishing risk-based priorities in food safety. And one of the fundamental pieces of a risk-based decision-making system is the acknowledgement that there are limited resources. We don't have endless resources, even in the West, certainly in the United States. We certainly don't have unlimited resources to address food safety. So this is a common theme across all governments and organizations, institutions. And so given that we have limited resources, we want to focus more resources on places where the risk is the highest. That's the fundamental core of what a risk-based decision-making system is. And there is another short course on risk-based decision-making that's in this series, and that talks more about decision-making in general, kind of some of the principles there, and ties it to the idea of risk. Then we have this course on risk assessment, which provides some of the fundamentals about how estimates of risk are generated. Then, as I mentioned, Leon Goris has a course on risk management, which talks about applying that information you have on risk to decisions that are meant to reduce risk. And then finally, we have a short course on risk ranking, because part of the project is to conduct a risk ranking and a risk prioritization in Ethiopia with the Ethiopian government stakeholders, so that they are working to take the data that's available and make decisions about what are the priorities for Ethiopia in food safety. So those are other workshops or other trainings that are part of this series. The first workshop, and we're going to have these 3 workshops towards this idea of risk prioritization. The first one is to be held in March 2020, so that these courses are being prepared in advance of that workshop, so that people who are participating in that workshop have some background on risk assessment, risk-based decision making, risk management, and risk ranking. And then we're going to have 2 other workshops. So the first workshop is, we're calling it a scoping workshop. That's to start to set the stage for the decisions we need to make in order to do the risk ranking. Risk ranking workshop will hopefully be later in 2020, and then that's where we will have the Ethiopian stakeholders rank the hazards, and then all the potential food hazards about what are the most important in terms of what Ethiopia's priorities are. And then the last one is risk prioritization, and that's where we start to look at interventions in specific food areas. So we're matching pathogens to food, and then talking about what are the interventions that could be implemented and prioritizing among those. So this is a part of a larger project. I wanted to just put that in context. And this course, again, is meant to give background to people who might not be familiar with risk assessment or some of these other fields. And hopefully it's a very short course. It's really just hitting the highlights. And there's many, I provide throughout the course some additional resources you can look for to find more information on any of these areas. So the learning objectives for this course, the short course on risk assessment, are just, number 1, to have an understanding of what we mean when we say the word risk, and then also have an understanding of how it's estimated, what are the tools and methods we use to calculate risk, and then also, as part of that, recognizing the steps of a risk assessment. There's kind of 4 basic steps of a risk assessment that were developed decades ago when the fields first emerged, and I'll walk through each of those in the different modules of the course. And then I also want you to have a general understanding of what are the types of data sources that are used to conduct these risk assessments, because part of a risk-based decision-making system is knowing what data to collect and how it's used. So I'm going to cover a lot in this course. It's meant to be a relatively short course, different modules between 10 to 15 minutes. I think there's 8 modules altogether, and there's some readings also. So in terms of prerequisites for this course, the prior knowledge that is needed, this course is really meant for everyone. You don't have to have detailed scientific knowledge or an understanding of modeling or really even a deep understanding of food safety to take this course. It's meant for everyone to be able to access this information. But some knowledge of these fields is helpful: public health, the food supply chain, probability and statistics, and data analysis and modeling. So some awareness and some information about what those fields entail will probably help your understanding of this course. And there are some resources available on the Canvas site, which is the home website for this course. And so there's some resources there that you can use to access if you don't have this prior knowledge, just again to give you some background information. But again, it is designed so that you don't have to have a lot of scientific knowledge or experience to be able to benefit from this course. So again, my name is Kara Morgan, and I'm the lead instructor for this risk assessment class. I'm a research scientist at the Center for Foodborne Illness Research and Prevention. And my graduate studies were at Carnegie Mellon University in a program called Engineering and Public Policy, which is a quantitative policy analysis program. And so I brought those skills in statistics and analysis and modeling to the food safety realm when I worked at the Food and Drug Administration in Washington, D.C. For 11 years. And now I'm here in Ohio, and I also am a teacher at the Glenn College, the John Glenn College of Public Affairs here at Ohio State University. And I'm the lead for this objective about establishing risk-based priorities for tartar. So a couple just overview notes about why risk assessment is the tool of use. So Codex Alimentarius Commission, which is an international organization that all countries look to for guidance and direction on food safety and other things as well, develops these harmonized food standards, and they have adopted risk assessment as the tool of preference for setting these. So these international bodies are embracing risk assessment as the right tool to use, again, because of the acknowledgement of limited resources and an interest in making decisions that are based on risk. So food safety risk analysis generally is something that is carried out by many different levels of government. So Codex is the international level. Of course, when you're looking at things at the international level, it's much more abstract than when you get down in detail, but certainly even national, regional, local organizations are all a part of the food safety system. And not only the authorities, the government people, but also the people in the private sector, industry people that are making decisions about how do they produce their food, how do they transport their food and store their food. All of those are, as you'll see throughout these short courses, all of those are also part of the food safety system that we hope is moving towards a more risk-based approach, and that's what we're hoping we convey in these courses. So generally, the countries will conduct risk assessments. Sometimes non-government organizations will conduct them. Sometimes the private sector will conduct them, and generally industry conducts them as well. But those are more obviously just for within their purview. So there are readings for this course on the Carmen site. Again, readings that are meant to provide you with some more information about risk assessment. A lot of it will be reinforcing the material that we cover, and so they may be read before the course is taken if that's the way that you learn, or they could also be read afterwards, or they might be just used for reference as you're going through the course. And then, as I mentioned, I'm hoping to really trigger some interest in these areas from the participants, and so I will provide some more advanced readings, maybe some more advanced videos in a different section of the Carmen website. So if you want to get deeper into any of these topics, there are some resources for you there. A lot of the advanced readings are much more technical and much more detailed, but might be of interest to some folks who are taking this course. So thank you for joining this course, this end of Module 1, and the next module, the next series of modules, we'll talk about risk assessment in a more detailed way.